Good day. My name is Don Green, and I'm an attorney in Nevada and California. Many of you know me from my show and podcast on the American Guns and Glory Network, and a lot of you probably recognize me as a fixture at most of the gun shows in Las Vegas. In fact, we had one a couple of weeks ago. But today, in our continuing series of in our election specials, I'm pleased to announce today that we're presenting Bill Gonzalez, a former judge who's now running for judge in Justice Court Department 6. And up on the screen right now, you're going to see some of the endorsements which Judge Gonzalez, former Judge Gonzalez has received over the past several months, and we'll discuss the importance of these. But just to give you an idea of the breadth of his endorsements, from the Asian community to law enforcement in Las Vegas to law enforcement in Washoe County and up in Carson City area. So you see a man who's got a wide spectrum of endorsements, and again, we'll go over that. So I'm pleased to I'm pleased to introduce Bill Gonzalez, who is a judicial candidate in Las Vegas Justice Court Department 6. And how are you, Bill? How are you today?
I'm doing great today, Don. And again, it's nice to be on your show again. I always love watching your show and being on your show. So happy to be here, and I appreciate the invitation.
Yes, thank you so much. We're going to start off. We'll get into some details in a few minutes on what a justice of the peace does and the different court structure, because a lot of our people in the audience don't necessarily know the difference between what happens in court and what happens in various types of courts. But right now, Bill, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, I've lived here in Las Vegas for 25 years. I've practiced here in 25 years. I'm a litigator. I'm in the courtroom all the time. The last 23 years, I've been actually in the seat that I'm running for. I've been in that seat, or actually in that court, every day for 5 years when I was younger. I've done felony murder trials. I have done preliminary hearings. I have probably represented 2,000 people down there. I was in juvenile court, Don, for 2 years representing children down there. And from there, I was appointed by our governor to be a family court judge. And during that time, I had over 10,000 cases that I oversaw as a judge, and also 425 trials as a sitting judge. And that's one of the things. Experience means a lot in justice court, because you're making very important decisions regarding the safety of our community.
Well, thank you. And tell us a little bit about your family.
I've been happily married 35 years to my wife, Anna Maria. She was born in El Salvador. She's been here 50 years. We have 4 children. My oldest son is in law school in San Diego currently. And we have 3 grandchildren and 2 on the way. So for me, as a father, as a grandfather, as a husband, safety is my number one priority on the bench and in the community.
And would you say that safety is an important factor for a judge to consider? And we'll go over that in a little bit of detail, but right now, as you bring it up, would you say that safety of the community is one of the primary duties of a judge, regardless of where you're sitting?
Absolutely. If we're not keeping our community safe, then we're not doing our job as a judge. That's the number one priority. And you need to have experience to be able to assess when somebody's arrested and they come before you in justice court, whether that person is a threat to the community, if there's a safety issue there, or whether that person needs, some type of mental health treatment, or they need to be in veterans court, or they need substance abuse. As a judge and as an attorney, I probably have been involved in over 600 trials, probably over 15,000 cases, and I have the experience to make that assessment and ensure that the right decision is made, because as you know, Don, if the wrong decision is made, it could be fatal.
And tell us, we'll get to this next slide, please. And we'll get to that in a minute, but let's go to the next slide. Okay, again, many of our viewers and many of the people in our listening audience understand the court structure, but for those who don't understand it, we have a slide up in front of us, and the viewing audience can see it. Can you briefly go through where it says court structure and tell us a little bit about these courts and their jurisdiction, their power, and what they do?
Very good. Well, let's let's start at the bottom. You have municipal court. That is a city court. We have the City of Las Vegas Municipal Court. They handle misdemeanors. The majority of those cases are DUIs, domestic violence, small type crimes. They also handle traffic tickets as well. You have concurrent jurisdiction because you could get pulled over for a traffic ticket in Las Vegas, but you could get a ticket from Justice Court or you could get a ticket from municipal court. Same with if it's a misdemeanor crime, you have concurrent jurisdiction, so you could end up in either of those courts. For the viewers out there, because of COVID, if you get a ticket here and it's a Justice Court ticket, you can actually go online. You could pay your fine online, and they allow you to negotiate with the district attorney's office, and they reduce it to a traffic ticket or to a parking ticket, so you don't get any points. So you don't need an attorney for that. They allow you to do that yourself.
Well, good. And then the next one up is the Justice Court. Tell us about Justice Court. We'll get into detail, but briefly talk about Justice Court.
So Justice Court handles some of the same type of cases as you do in municipal court. You know, they handle misdemeanors. They also handle felony arraignments. They handle preliminary hearings, which are probable cause hearings. They handle civil disputes less than $1,500 or $15,000. They handle landlord tenants and small claims. Most of the viewers, the next court up is district court, and most of the viewers don't understand that for criminal cases, district court is not a court of original jurisdiction. So you have to have a preliminary hearing on a gross misdemeanor or a felony, and it's pretty much a probable cause hearing. Is there sufficient evidence that that case can be sent to district court, or you have a grand jury that's impaneled and you get an indictment, and that's how you get into district court. And again, they handle gross misdemeanors, felonies. They handle, large civil cases, murder cases. I appeared in district court pretty much for 5 years on a daily basis on anywhere from simple cases to more egregious, like felony murder type cases.
Okay. And then our next would be the Nevada Court of Appeals.
So if you have a district court case and you disagree with the decision the judge made, you can appeal that case. And here in Nevada, they have an intermediary court, which is a court of appeals. They have some, generally the family law cases, because you want to resolve those cases quickly. You don't want to wait years on a custody case. They'll take some of those cases. Some of the cases from the Supreme Court, if they believe it's better held and it'll be quicker to have it handled in the appellate court, they'll handle those as well. And from there, you go to the Nevada Supreme Court. And if it's a very serious case, if it's dealing with a constitutional matter, if it's dealing with, the governor or a government office, you would handle those type of cases. And then a lot of the, serious, if you have a death penalty case, that would probably be heard on the appeal in the Nevada Supreme Court.
Tell us, have you handled cases before the Nevada Supreme Court?
I have filed cases before the Nevada Supreme Court. I had one case where they made a decision in my client's favor without even having a hearing, but I have not appeared in front of them as a litigant.
But do you feel it's important to understand, even though your particular office for Justice Court, which you're seeking, even though you're limited, would you consider it important to have a broad-based background with working with all of these courts, regardless of what you filed in particular courts?
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't matter what courtroom you're in, it is essential that you understand the rules of procedure regarding that courtroom. You understand the criminal laws relating to a case, because the last thing that you want is to have a case end up getting appealed because a judge didn't follow the law. And you don't get that right out of law school. You need to have that experience where, in my case, I have, years and years, over decades of experience, both in criminal cases and in civil cases. In Justice Court, where I'm running for, it's about 80% of the cases are criminal cases. And then the other 20% is about, civil matters. Unfortunately, they have two cases or two courtrooms that the judges every day, all day long, are dealing with domestic violence issues. It's a serious issue in our community. I believe that if we could get more treatment on the front end, where people could go to counseling, whether it's through the church, through their health insurance, that maybe you could avoid some of those, be preventative, because once it comes to a physical altercation, that's bad for everybody, including, the children.
Yes. Let's have the next slide, please. Now, we have before us a slide for our viewers and for you that talks about the justice of the peace duties in criminal cases. Can you run this list? Can you go through this list for us?
So again, if you're arrested for a crime, that means the police believe that there was probable cause that a crime was committed. Then it goes into the district attorney's office, and they determine whether they're going to file a case or not. Some cases, they don't have enough evidence, and so they don't file against them. But if you end up getting arrested, you're going to end up in front of a justice of the peace, and that judge is going to make a determination as to whether you're going to remain in custody, whether you're going to get out on bail, whether you're going to have what they call own recognizant release, that you don't have any bail, but you promise that you're going to stay out of trouble. You're going to make your court appearances. So, for example, let me give you a case. Let's say you had a traffic ticket that went into warrant, and you forgot about it, and you didn't pay it, and you didn't go to court. You get a warrant, and you get arrested. On that type of a case, you don't need to be in jail because you're not a criminal. You should be at work. You should be at your home. We've had cases here where somebody in our community recently stabbed a news reporter and killed him. You need to be in jail on something like that because that's a serious matter. And you don't know if somebody's taken that egregious of a step, what they're likely to do. And that person would probably have a very high bail, or they would stay in custody until their matter is resolved.
And would you say that in this list, let's go back to that list, please. We're talking about presiding over preliminary hearings, conducting non-jury trials, and then the battery domestic violence courts actually setting jury trials because of a Nevada Supreme Court decision. But and then the specialty courts, and we'll get to that in a minute. Would you say that as to these duties, that in this day and age, at this time in history, that you need a broad-based, experienced lawyer and jurist to fill that seat in justice court?
Absolutely. You can't just go on the bench and not have a background in dealing with cases involving domestic violence. Again, as a district court judge, I had over 10,000 cases. Many of those cases, there were hearings regarding domestic violence. Currently, I represent parents in the abuse and neglect court. My clients have substance abuse issues, mental health issues. They have a lot of issues that you need to be familiar with when you're making a decision. And having gone through that process thousands and thousands of times, I have the experience. Not everybody who has mental health issues is a violent person. And you need to understand where that person is in their treatment. If they are violent, then you have to address that first and get them treatment. But you need to have the background and the breadth of experience where you can make that assessment and and again, the number one priority is keeping our community safe. And if you don't have that background and that training and that experience, and you make mistakes on some of these cases, you're putting the community at risk. Mm-hmm. And as a judge, if you're going to take the bench, you cannot be in an area of law that you're not familiar with and just walk in on the first day and think, well, I'm going to, make the right choice.
Yes. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. Now, take a little turn here. You mentioned earlier about a justice of the peace presiding in civil cases. Now, a lot of people think that this is now Judge Judy, but explain the process as you understand it as a judge to which you may be assigned in civil, correct?
Correct.
It doesn't mean you'll automatically be a judge in the criminal division, correct? So go through this in the civil cases. Tell us about that.
So on a civil case, and again, as a family court judge, I handled thousands of civil cases. I handled cases that involved franchises throughout the United States, multiple businesses as a part of a divorce, and you would have to sit as a judge and hear evidence, and they would be able to submit exhibits and have testimony. And then the court, as a judge, I would make a decision as to how that property was divided. If you have a civil case, let's say you're in a car accident and it's less than $15,000, that's going to come before me. They're going to file their complaint. They're going to file an answer, and then you're going to have a non-jury trial. It's going to be a bench trial where you look at the evidence. They'll have to present evidence, medical records, doctor's reports. You may have, pictures of the vehicle showing the damage to that vehicle. And as a judge, you'll have to sit down and make a determination as to their injuries, the damages, and then you would, like a jury, you would determine what kind of damages and what kind of financial support that they would get as a result of that.
So again, broad-based experience is necessary, even if you're assigned for whatever period of time to the civil division, correct?
That is correct.
And would you say that this is, even for the civil and the criminal, this is not something for on-the-job training?
Absolutely. Kind of the way I look at it, Don, if you're going in for a heart surgery, you don't want to have a doctor who's just got out of training to do your heart surgery. You want a specialist and somebody who knows what they're doing, so when they open you up and they see all your valves and what they need to do to fix that you have a strong idea that they're going to do the right thing. And again, in that type of a case, the failure to have that experience could be fatal. And
for example, 3 years ago now, we had a very important Nevada Supreme Court decision, Valdez-Jimenez, on revisiting the issues of bail. And this was I want to call it a landmark bail case in Nevada. And I had one in the 90s called Kuykendall, which was the first decision allowing, it mandated credit for time served. Before that, it was discretionary. But like a decision like Valdez-Jimenez, which changes the structure of how you review bail. Is this something when you go into your office at whatever time at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there may be advanced opinions from the Nevada Supreme Court requiring almost immediate analysis by the courts, is that something to which you're accustomed to doing?
Oh, absolutely. And I've actually done bail hearings as an attorney. I would be doing them as a judge, and now they're looking at not just looking at economic factors, but they're looking at risk factors as well. And they're not looking at, again, your status, whether you have an attorney, a public defender, you're representing yourself. It's down to risk. You look at a number of factors, but the thing that you have to look at, most importantly, is this person, if they're not a flight risk, if they're not a risk to themselves to harm themselves or somebody else, then you could give them an OR or a lower bail. But again, like in the case of somebody who murdered somebody, that's a completely different situation, and you have to assess that and say, okay, you know what? He hasn't had his day in court, but at the same time, this person is the crime that is allegedly committed is extremely serious, and you have to take that into consideration.
So it's not just where you go in, you put on the robe, and you make decisions. There's a lot of studying required. In you don't get a law clerk in justice court, correct?
You do not. You do not.
So this research that you get motions and explain. There's something there. When I use the term, I don't use the term motions mostly for my client. I use court papers. Explain what a motion is and what a judge has to do with this.
So, for example, a case is filed, whether it's a criminal case or a civil case, a case is filed, but just because a case is filed doesn't mean that's the end of the story. And so if you need some type of a temporary relief in a civil case, you may file a motion and say, look, while this is pending, these are the issues that I need to address right now. They're very relevant today. And in a criminal case, the same thing. If you have a murder case, that case may not be tried for 3 or 4 years, especially if you're in the federal system. So you can file a motion regarding, judge, my client has never committed a crime before. He has a job. He's lived in our community. He's not at risk, and I would like to have this court make a determination regarding bail while the case is pending. So there's a lot of things out there. Or you may even file a motion saying, look, they don't have sufficient evidence. I know that the justice of the peace sent it up to district court, but we believe that that decision was erroneously, and we don't want to wait for a trial to determine whether that case should proceed or not.
Yes. Okay, may we have the next slide, please? Okay. One of the things which is coming up, and an issue which I see in my practice, and I've been a lawyer almost 40 years, is I look at the judge's judicial temperament. And being elected to the position of Justice of the Peace, would you agree it's not a matter for on-the-job training, and this is where your significant trial and civil experience is absolutely necessary in order to be an effective jurist. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely agree with that. And let me give you an example. When I took the bench in 2009, I was appointed by our governor. I went through a judicial selection process where your courtroom experience is under, the microscope, your community experience, and then you go to the governor. I was one of the top 3 candidates based on my experience in the courtroom and in the community, and I got appointed to sit as a family court judge in Department F. When I took the bench, there were 1,600 open cases, which is a lot for a family court judge. It's a lot for any judge. And over a period of years, I got that down to 400 cases. And how I did that is I created an atmosphere in the courtroom where people were comfortable coming into the courtroom, that they realized they didn't have to fight over everything. And I created an atmosphere that, especially in family court, is better for them to resolve their disputes than a judge. And I think that having that demeanor in the courtroom, that's your responsibility as a judge. And, attorneys should not be yelling in the courtroom. Litigants should not be yelling in the courtroom. You need to go in there and have a demeanor where somebody can come in, have their day in court, and feel that, what happened, whether I agree with it or not, it was fair, and the judge treated me fairly. And I think that's very important. But you don't get that experience, just coming out of law school or having practice in just one area of the law.
Okay. And we have a case. Can we have the next slide? We have a case in Wisconsin that's going on right now. It's probably soon to be ending. And this is where there's a pro per litigant representing himself in multiple murders and multiple charges. And the judge in that case, and I've tried to watch as much as possible, the judge in that case, and we got it up on the screen now, has exercised the restraint of a saint with this man. And this is a pro per litigant where, and you may have, I take it that over the time you've had attorneys on both sides, but whether it's civil, whether it's criminal, and the defendants who have become very disruptive. What, in your experience, how do you believe that your experience would deal with a situation like this? Because I see it coming.
What I can say in family court, and again, I had 10,000 cases, I would deal with pro per litigants on a regular basis. And when they would come in, I would provide them information as to where they could go, because they wouldn't know how to admit an exhibit to the court. They wouldn't know how to, examine a witness and get the judge the proper information that they need to make a decision. And through UNLV, through legal aid, they teach classes on how to conduct yourself in the courtroom. And that's something that you can give them advice as to where to go to get help, but you still have to follow the rules of procedure, the laws, and you cannot just take one person's side or be so differential that you're not following the law. That is very important. And it appears in that case that you talked about that the judge went so far to the other side that she overstepped her boundaries as far as applying the law, because you still have to apply the law in every case.
Okay. So again, let's look at this next slide, please. The slide up here, and for our listening audience, says reasons for electing Bill Gonzalez to the Justice Court. What's the first item here? And explain that as to yourself again.
Again, I have experience of handling a heavy caseload, making sure that people are treated fairly, just years and years of experience that I bring to the bench. So I don't have to, start from square one and say, well, what does a judge do? How do I handle my calendar? How do I, address the issues in front of me? And so that's something that I can bring back to the bench immediately.
And next is experience as a lawyer.
Again, I have experience as a judge and as a lawyer. So on the civil side, I have extensive trial experience for 15 years, as in the criminal court system, 10 years extensive criminal experience. I'm the only candidate. And again, like you said, this case, you could be given a civil assignment, you could be a criminal assignment. I can walk in on day one and immediately handle whatever caseload that I'm given. My understanding is my opponent has more of just a civil background and has not been, has very, very limited experience on the criminal side. And the likelihood, for my understanding, is that this department is going to end up being a criminal calendar.
Yes. And then we want to talk about endorsements. Can we go to that slide, please? Tell us about these endorsements and what they mean and how you get them.
Okay, I probably have more than 35 endorsements from organizations in the community, whether it's a chamber of commerce, whether it's a police organization, labor organizations. I've been endorsed by veterans, by firefighters. When you go into these, also our sheriff-elect, Kevin McMahill, he has also endorsed me. And pretty much every law enforcement agency in the state of Nevada has endorsed me. And the reason why they have endorsed me, because they know that I'm going to be fair, but they know that I'm going to keep our community safe. And when you go into these endorsement interviews, they ask you legal questions. They ask you questions, both the firefighters, the police officers, and other individuals, they don't give these endorsements away. They're very difficult to obtain, and they put you through under scrutiny before they give you that endorsement. And that way, when individuals who don't have much information about the judges, they can say, okay, well, I know the police have looked at this individual. I know the sheriff has looked at this individual. I know other communities, organizations that take the time, they've vetted these persons. And so I know that this person is somebody who's got the experience, because they wouldn't be given the endorsement unless they felt that this person had the experience and was the right person for the community. And the other thing that I would say, having the legal experience is extremely important, Don, but caring about our community and making sure that each case is the most important case that you're handling is the one in front of you. And I look at everybody as a brother and a sister. I don't look at, color of skin. I don't look at your economic background. I just look at, this is somebody in our community that, I'm going to treat fairly and try to help out.
Because in your endorsements, you have endorsements from the Asian Chamber of Commerce.
I do.
You have them from law enforcement.
Correct.
You got them from LIUNA, the laborers union. They're on East Bonanza, and I know because I represented some of these people in a slate years ago. But they're the people that put up the glass at Allegiant Stadium. So there's a lot of it. There's a broad-based endorsement package you have here. Would you agree? And again, would you agree?
Absolutely agree.
And then as to these, as you said, you've got it from Hispanics in politics, you've got it from law enforcement.
Latin Chamber of Commerce.
Latin Chamber of Commerce. So now, do these people, they approach you or you approach them?
Well, they have an interview process, and they'll send out a questionnaire that you have to fill out before you go in there, and then they'll interview all the candidates, and they will ask you questions, and they will look at not only what you do as an attorney, but what you do in the community. And I'm a candidate, but I'm a voter as well, Don. And when I look at somebody, I want to know what you have done in our community, not what you've done, what you're going to do, but what you have done. And after my first race in 2003, Oscar Goodman appointed me to the Housing Authority for the city of Las Vegas. I was the vice chair there for 4 years. It was not a paid position, but I fought for affordable housings for our veterans, for our senior citizens, for low-income families. I was part of the clinical board for the law school for 5 years, where I worked with 3 deans and law professors to provide, hands-on experience for the law students, in immigration law, family law, criminal law. I mentored, students. All 5 of my law clerks were from UNLV. So when you look at what I've done in the community, I think it's significant, and I will continue to do that in the community.
For our listening audience, how would they contact your particular campaign?
Okay, so my phone number, which is on my campaign materials, is 702-526-0784. I figure if somebody wants to know about Bill Gonzalez, who better to ask than Bill? Obviously, there's times that I'm in court or I'm on an amazing show in our community and I can't pick up the phone and answer it. But if somebody wants to know more about me, they can give me a call. I also have Bill Gonzalez for Judge is my website. And then if you look under Bill Gonzalez for Judge, you can see me on Facebook, and you can see some of the things that I'm doing in the community and some of the things that I have done.
Is that Bill Gonzalez for Judge? Is that the
number
number 4?
Correct.
F-O-R.
Yeah, the number 4.
Very good. And anyway, you can contact the judge, and I'm wholeheartedly supporting Judge Gonzalez, or former Judge Gonzalez, because I believe in what he's done, and I've seen him in the courtroom in action as a sitting pro tem judge and as a litigator. So I do this, and I've been doing this for 40 years, and that's how I learn. I learn from other lawyers. I want to thank our audience. I want to thank Bill Gonzalez, and of course I want to thank Rigel Studios for their superb production. Please take a look at us and subscribe, and you can kind of get a hold of me, Don Green, and my cellular is 702-409-8239, or you can look up Don Green Gun Show Lawyer, and you can see our website. Thank you so much, and good day.